I worked for 15 years as a nurse in the palliative care ward of São Lucas Hospital. 15 years administering haloperidol to terminally ill patients who were agitated, delirious, and in pain that no medication could control anymore. We called it the injection of peace. I would administer it, wait 2 or 3 minutes, and watch the person relax, close their eyes, breathe more slowly. But there's something nobody tells you in medical school. There's something I only discovered when I started paying real attention to what they said in those minutes, right after the injection, before finally falling asleep. They talked. And what they said, it changed everything I thought I knew about death. My name is Claudia, I'm 47 years old, and today I'm going to tell you 7 stories I'll never forget. 7 patients who showed me that there's something beyond. And the 7th story, the 7th happened to me. And when you hear it, you'll understand why I'm no longer afraid of dying. If you're feeling this way with me right now, stop everything, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and leave a comment below about where you're listening from and what time it is there, because the next story will change everything forever. There was a gentleman who arrived on a Friday morning. Mr. Antonio. He was 72 years old, with end-stage pancreatic cancer. His daughter, Mariana, was there by his side, holding his hand the whole time. He had been transferred from the ICU because there was nothing more they could do. His body was no longer responding. But he was conscious. And he was extremely agitated. He pulled at the sheet, tried to rip out the 4, shouted that he had to leave, that someone was waiting for him. Mariana cried so much that I had to sit beside her and hold her hand too. The doctor prescribed haloperidol. 5 milligrams. I prepared the syringe, entered the room at 11:23 in the morning, I remember because I looked at the clock on the wall and thought, it's going to be a long day. I explained to Mr. Antonio that it was just to calm him down. He looked at me with those deep, tired eyes and said, "Okay, daughter, but I need to go soon." I administered it. He didn't even feel the needle. I stood there beside the bed, checking the monitor, waiting for him to relax. Mariana was sitting in the blue plastic chair, her bag on her lap, wiping her face with a crumpled tissue. And then, about 2 minutes later, Antonio opened his eyes. But they opened differently. You know when someone wakes up from a good dream and has that kind of distant, enchanted look? That was it. He looked at the ceiling. And smiled. He really smiled. Mariana saw and asked, "Dad, what's wrong?" He didn't answer her. He kept looking at the ceiling and said, very softly, but I heard perfectly because I was about half a meter away from him, "Hi, Mom." I froze. His mother had died more than 30 years ago. Mariana heard it too. She got up from the chair, came closer, held her father's hand and said, "Dad, who's there?" He kept smiling. "It's Grandma, honey. She's right there. She's calling me. Look how beautiful she is. What a pretty dress." I looked at the ceiling. There was nothing there. But he saw. He saw so clearly that he stretched out his hand, as if to touch someone. Mariana started crying again, but this time it wasn't despair. It was something else. She asked, "Is she okay, Dad?" He said, "Yes, my daughter. She's happy. She said not to be sad. She said she'll take care of me." I stood there, holding the clipboard against my chest, not knowing what to do. Mr. Antonio stared at the ceiling for another 3 minutes. Then he closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and said, "I'm going, Mom." And he fell asleep. He died 6 hours later, on the same day, in his sleep. When I left the room, I went straight to the bathroom and cried. I cried because I didn't know what it was. But I knew I had seen something real. Mariana thanked me afterward. She said her father was at peace. And I thought, did the haloperidol make him see it? Or was he always going to see it, and the haloperidol just allowed him to relax enough to tell? But I still didn't imagine that this was just the beginning. 3 months later, a lady named Dona Rosa arrived. She was 84 years old, with severe heart failure, Her kidneys had practically stopped functioning. She was lucid, but tired. Tired in a way that makes you look at her and know, you know the person has already given up fighting. Her son, Ricardo, was there. He was a lawyer, always in a suit, always serious. He asked me everything, wanted to understand every detail, every medication. I explained that his mother wasn't in pain, but that she was very agitated at night. One day she woke up screaming, saying there was a man in black at the bedroom door. Ricardo was worried, he thought it was delirium. The doctor prescribed haloperidol. 5 milligrams, the same dose. I administered it on Thursday night, it must have been around 8:30. The room was somewhat dark, only the small light on above the sink. I gave the injection to her arm, thin as a twig. She didn't even move. Ricardo was sitting in the armchair next to me, fiddling with his cell phone, but I could see he was nervous. About 3 minutes after the injection, Dona Rosa opened her eyes. She looked at the door. And smiled. She smiled the same way SCU Antonio had smiled. And she said, "Alfredo." Ricardo dropped his cell phone immediately. "Mom, who is Alfredo?" She said, "He's your father, my son." Alfredo had died 18 years earlier. Stroke. Ricardo got up, came close to the bed, held his mother's hand and said, "Mom, is Dad there?" She said, "Yes. He's right there at the door. Look how handsome he is. In his blue suit. The one I gave him for our wedding anniversary." Ricardo started trembling. I saw it. His hand trembled when he held his mother's hand. He asked, "What's he doing?" She said, "He's waiting. He said that whenever I want, we'll go together." And then she turned her face and looked at her son. And she said something I'll never forget. She said, "Son, I want to go. I'm tired. But I wanted to ask you something." He was crying. "Anything, Mom." She said, "Don't be sad. I'll be okay. I'll stay with him. And one day you'll come too. We'll wait." Ricardo couldn't say anything. He just hugged her. And she closed her eyes and fell asleep. She died the next morning. And when Ricardo left the room, he came to talk to me. He said, "Nurse, I'm Catholic, but I never really believed in these things. But I swear I felt my father in that room. I felt him. I told him I felt him too. And it was true. Nothing prepared me for what I was about to experience. The third time was with a young man. He was only 39 years old. Leukemia. He had fought so hard, undergone chemotherapy, a bone marrow transplant, everything. But it wasn't enough. His body couldn't take it. He arrived in our ward already very weak. His name was Felipe. He was a history teacher. His wife, Letitia, was 6 months pregnant. I remember because she had that round belly, and every time she entered the room, she would put her hand on her belly and cry. Felipe was conscious, but he started to get agitated. He said he saw shadows, that someone was pulling the sheet. Letitia was terrified. The doctor prescribed haloperidol. 10 milligrams this time, because 5 hadn't been very effective before. I administered it on a Tuesday afternoon. 4:15. I remember because the sun was coming in through the window and shining directly on his bed. He was lying on his side, looking at the wall. I administered it. He sighed deeply. Letitia was sitting in the chair, with her hand on her belly, gently rocking it. Then, about 2 minutes later, Felipe turned his face to me and said, "There's someone here." I asked, "Who?" He said, "I don't know. But it's good. It's a light, it's a warm light. It's right here beside the bed." Letitia stood up. "Felipe, what are you seeing?" He said, I'm seeing my grandfather. He's here. He's smiling at me. His grandfather had died when he was a child. But he remembered. And he described it. He said his grandfather was wearing a white shirt, with suspenders, the way he always wore them. Letitia asked, "Is he saying something?" Felipe said, "He said everything will be all right. He said the baby will be born strong. He said I can go in peace." Letitia broke down. She sat on the floor of the room and cried. I went to her, helped her up, but I was trembling too. Felipe kept looking at the side of the bed for another 5 minutes. And then he said something that gave me goosebumps all over. He said, "There are more people here. There are many people. I know some, but there are others I don't know. But everyone is smiling. Everyone is happy. And there's a light. Wow, what a beautiful light." He closed his eyes. He breathed. And he fell asleep. He died 2 days later. And the baby? He was born. He was born strong, healthy, a boy. Letitia sent me a photo later. She wrote, "Thank you for taking care of him until the end." I cried when I read it. And I thought, how did he know the baby would be born healthy? How? But I still had no idea what was to come. The fourth story happened to a little girl. She was only 7 years old. Brain tumor. Inoperable. Her name was Sophia. She was tiny, thin, but full of life. She painted pictures, played with dolls, sang school songs. Her mother, Patricia, never left her side. Not even to eat. She slept in her chair, hugging her bag. Her father, Jorge, was quieter. He sat in a corner and watched his daughter with that lost look. Sophia started having seizures. And then she became very agitated. She screamed, cried, said there were bugs in the wall. Patricia begged the doctor to do something. He prescribed haloperidol. But she was a child, so the dose was smaller. 2 milligrams. I prepared the syringe with such care. I prayed before entering the room. I went in. Sophia was lying down, sweaty, trembling. I spoke to her very slowly. I said, "Sophia, your aunt is going to give you some medicine to calm you down, okay?" She looked at me with those huge eyes and said, "Okay, Auntie." I gave it to her. She didn't even cry. Patricia held her daughter's hand and began to softly sing a lullaby. About 2 minutes later, Sophia stopped trembling. And she opened her eyes. And smiled. A huge smile. And said, "Mom, look." Patricia stopped singing. "What, my daughter?" Sophia pointed to the ceiling. "Look at the little angels." Patricia looked. There was nothing there. But Sophia could see them. She said, "They're flying. They're white. And there's a pretty lady in the middle. She's coming here." Jorge got up from his chair. He came closer. "Sophia, who is the lady?" Sophia said, "I don't know, Daddy. But she's pretty. She's wearing a white dress. And she's smiling at me." Patricia started to cry, but tried to hold back so as not to scare her daughter. Sophia kept looking at the ceiling. And she said not to be afraid. She said she's going to take me to a beautiful place. There are flowers. There are butterflies. And there are other children. I was leaning against the wall, with the empty syringe in my hand, trembling all over. Sophia looked at her mother. And said, "Mom, can I go?" Patricia broke down. She hugged her daughter and said, "Yes, my love. You can go. Mommy loves you." Sophia said, "I love you too, Mom. And you too, Dad." And she closed her eyes. And she fell asleep. She died 3 hours later. And I swear to you. I swear that when she died, the room felt different. It felt lighter. Warmer. As if someone was there, comforting her. Patricia hugged me afterward. She said, "Thank you for letting her go in peace." I couldn't answer. I just cried along with her. Nothing prepared me for what I was about to experience. The fifth story was the strangest of all so far. It was about a 68-year-old man named Mario. He had lung cancer. It had already metastasized to several places. But he was lucid, he talked, he told jokes. He had a large family. He had his wife, 3 children, grandchildren, everyone came to visit. And he was one of those who didn't like to cause trouble. Always polite, always grateful. But one night he started to get very agitated. He said there were too many people in the room, that there wasn't room for everyone, that he couldn't breathe. His wife, Donna Celia, said there was no one else besides her. But he insisted. The doctor prescribed haloperidol. 5 milligrams. I administered it on a Friday night, almost midnight. The hallway was empty, silent, only the noise of the machines. I entered the room. Mario was sweating, pulling at the sheet. Donna Celia was standing beside the bed, holding his hand. I administered the injection. He took a deep breath. And then, about 3 minutes later, he became very quiet. He looked at the door. And said, "They came in." Donna Celia asked, "Who, darling?" He said, "My parents. My brother. And, wait, there are more people. There are people I don't know." I froze. Donna Celia did too. She asked, "What do you mean, people you don't know?" He said, "There's a bearded gentleman. There's a lady with glasses. There's a young woman. I don't know who they are. But they're all smiling. And, wait, they're saying they came to get you. That it's time." Donna Celia started to cry. She asked, "And do you want to go?" He looked at her. And said, "I want to. But I'm afraid to leave you alone." She said, "I'll be fine. You can go." And then something happened that I had never seen before. He turned his face back to the door and said, "You can come in." And I felt it. I felt a change in the air. It became heavier. Denser. And he said, "They came in. They're here now." Around the bed. Donna Celia looked around. She didn't see anything. But she felt it. She later told me she felt it. SCU Mario smiled. He closed his eyes. And said, "Thank you for coming to get me." And he fell asleep. He died the next morning. And when I left the room, I had to stop in the hallway and take a deep breath. Because I had felt it too. I had felt that the room was full. And later I discovered something. I asked Donna Celia about the people her husband had described. The ones he didn't know. She showed me old family photos. And there was a bearded gentleman. It was his great-grandfather. He had never seen his great-grandfather in person. Only in photos. But he described him perfectly. But I still had no idea what was to come. The sixth story was witnessed by more than one person. It was the one that left me most shaken. Because I wasn't the only one who saw it. There was a lady named Donna Ivone. She was 76 years old, with very advanced stomach cancer. She was an evangelical Christian, always with a Bible in her hand, singing hymns even while lying in bed. Her daughter, Joanna, was also evangelical. The two prayed together, sang together. And Donna Ivone said she wasn't afraid to die. She said Jesus would come for her. But she started having a lot of pain. Pain that morphine couldn't control anymore. And she became agitated. She screamed, pulled her hair. Joanna called us in desperation. The doctor prescribed haloperidol. 10 milligrams. I administered it, but I asked another nurse, Sonia, to stay with me. Because I was afraid I wouldn't be able to manage alone. We both went in. It was 7 o'clock on a Saturday night. The room was full. Joanna was there, her husband was there, and she had 2 teenage grandchildren. Everyone was crying. We gave her the injection. Donna Ivone stopped screaming. She took a deep breath. And then, about 2 minutes later, she opened her eyes. And looked at the corner of the room. And said, "Look." Everyone looked. And Joanna said, "Mom, what is it?" Donna Ivone said, "It's light. It's a golden light. It's coming from the corner of the room. It's coming this way." Sonia looked at me. I looked at her. We both looked at the corner of the room. And I swear to you. I swear. I saw it. It wasn't very bright, but it was as if the air was shining. As if there was a very soft light there. Sonia saw it too. I know because she squeezed my arm. Donna Ivone continued talking. "There's someone in the light. There's Jesus. He's here." Joanna fell to her knees. "Mom, is Jesus there?" Donna Ivone said, "Okay. He's smiling. He's reaching out his hand. He said it's time to go home." And then everyone in the room felt it. Everyone. Joanna's husband said later that he felt a warmth in his chest. The grandchildren said they felt an enormous peace. Sonia said she felt as if someone had hugged her. And I felt that I wasn't alone there anymore. Donna Ivone smiled. She looked at her daughter. And said, "I love you. Don't cry. I'll be okay. I'll be with him." And she closed her eyes. And died. Right there. At that instant. And when she died, the light went out. But there was a feeling that something sacred had happened there. Sonia left the room crying. I did too. And we hugged in the hallway. We didn't need to say anything. Because we knew. We had seen it. We had felt it. And after that, I couldn't doubt anymore. Nothing prepared me for what I was about to experience. And then came the seventh story. The one that changed everything. The one that happened to me. It was a Sunday morning. I had just finished my night shift. I was tired, exhausted, but before leaving I went to check on a new patient who had arrived in the early hours of the morning. His name was Ronaldo. He was 81 years old, had suffered a very serious stroke, and was unconscious. His family hadn't arrived yet. I went into the room just to check his vital signs. And while I was there, taking his blood pressure, he opened his eyes. He looked at me. And he said, with great difficulty, dragging his words, "You're the nurse who takes care of the people who are dying." I was surprised. He shouldn't have been conscious. I said, "Yes, sir. I take care of them." He said, then you need to know." I asked, "Know what?" He said, that there's someone waiting for you too." I froze. "What do you mean?" He said, there's someone on the other side. Someone who loves you very much. He's waiting. To thank you. Because you took care of him." I started trembling. Because I knew. I knew who he was talking about. My father had died 3 years before. Cancer. I had taken care of him. I had given him medicine, held his hand, stayed with him until the very last second. And he had died in my arms. I asked Mr. Ronaldo, "Who's waiting for me?" He said, "A man, with glasses, hair, white hair, he's smiling. He said you took care of him with so much love, and that he's okay, he's very well." I broke down. I sat on the floor of the room and cried. Because my father wore glasses. And had white hair. And I had taken care of him. And he had told me, before he died, "Daughter, thank you for everything." Mr. Ronaldo continued talking. He said you don't need to be afraid. He said that when your time comes, he will be there, waiting, to take you. I couldn't stop crying. And then Ronaldo closed his eyes. And he died. Right there. In that instant. Without even having received haloperidol. Without anything. He just opened his eyes, gave me the message, and left. And I stayed there, sitting on the floor, crying, knowing that it had been real. That my father had sent me a message. Through a man I didn't even know. Through someone who had one foot on each side. I sat there for a long time. Until Sonia came in and found me. She helped me up. She hugged me. And I told her everything. And she said, "Claudia, this is a gift. He gave you certainty." And it was true. Because that day I stopped believing. I came to know. I worked in that ward for 15 years. I administered haloperidol to hundreds of patients. And I can tell you with absolute certainty, there's something beyond. There's life after this. There are people waiting on the other side. There's light. There's love. There's peace. I saw it. I felt it. And now I know. There are studies about it. Dr. Pim van Lommel, in the Netherlands, studied thousands of cases of near-death experiences. Dr. Bruce Grayson, in the United States, dedicated his entire life to understanding what happens when we die. There's a phenomenon called terminal lucidity, which is when a person who was unconscious suddenly wakes up, lucid, before dying. Science doesn't explain it. But science is beginning to accept that something is happening. Something we don't yet fully understand. But I don't need studies to know. Because I saw it with my own eyes. I heard it with my own ears. I felt it in my own heart. And now I'm no longer afraid of death. I'm not. Because I know that when my time comes, my father will be there. Waiting. Smiling. And he will take me home. To my real home. And it will be beautiful. It will be warm. It will be light. It will be love. And if you're listening to me now, I want you to know, you don't need to be afraid. You don't need to. Because death is not the end. It's just a passage. It's just a step. And on the other side there are people waiting for you. People who love you. People who have never forgotten you. So live. Live with love. Live with kindness. Take care of those who are by your side. Because one day you will cross over. And when you cross over, you will understand that everything made sense. Everything. Thank you for listening to me this far. Thank you for feeling this with me. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it. Because there are many people who are afraid. And this fear doesn't need to exist. It doesn't need to. Because I know. I know that something beautiful is waiting for all of us.